Father, thank you so much for being here with us this morning. Thank you for drawing each and every one of us here today. I believe that we are here for a purpose today, that through your word you have things that you want us to know about ourselves and about you. And so I pray that over these next few minutes, that you open our minds to the meaning of your word, that you open our hearts to the message that you have for us, and that you open our spirits to where you would have us go. We ask this in the name of your Son, Jesus Christ. Amen. All right, so Exodus chapter 3, starting in verse 4. When the Lord saw that he had turned aside, remember, I know I do this to you guys all the time, but remember, Moses is a shepherd. He's got this flock of sheep or goats or cattle or whatever he's got. He's in the wilderness. He's finding them pasturage. He comes to the other side of the mountain. Mountain happens to be Mount Horeb. He sees a bush that's on fire. We talked about this last week. For those of you who weren't here last week, there's a great movie about it. I encourage you to watch that. He sees a bush that's on fire, right? He says, wow, this is unusual. I'm going to check this thing out. And when Moses turns away from what he was doing and begins to pay attention to what God is doing, God started talking to him. So if you have ever wanted God to start talking to you, the first and very first thing you need to do is to stop doing what you're doing and start paying attention to what he's doing. Make sense? And so verse 4, this is exactly what's happening here. When the Lord saw that he, being Moses, turned aside to see God, God called out to him out of the bush, Moses, Moses, and Moses said, here I am. And then he said, do not come near, take your sandals off your feet, for the place on which you are standing is holy ground. Now, was the ground holy because there was something special about the dirt? No. Why was the ground holy? I have no idea what y'all just said. But it was holy because God was there, right? And wherever God goes, that there be holy, right? Does that make sense? And so he says, take off your sandals because you're standing on holy ground. And God introduces himself in verse 6. He said, I am the God of your father, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, the God of Jacob. And Moses, of course, hid his face because he was afraid to look at God. And I know we talked a little bit about that last week, but how many of you, if God started talking to you out of the middle of a fire, would be a little bit afraid? Yeah? Yeah, I mean, that's not normal, right? And so another thing we need to recognize when we're entering into a conversation with God is that his side of the conversation is going to be abnormal because he's God. That makes sense, right? And so he's not a person. He's not a human being. He's not going to communicate like we communicate. And so when unusual things are happening around us and we start to pay attention to it and God starts communicating to us through those unusual things, we are going to notice that those things are going to be a little weird. Yes? Make sense? All right, so Moses was afraid. The Lord says this, right? And remember last week, the Lord's like, this is what's happening, and I've got a plan, right? This is what he says here in these next couple of verses. Here's the plan. The Lord says, I have surely seen the affliction of my people who are in Egypt, have heard their cry because of their taskmasters. I know their sufferings, and have come down to deliver them out of the hands of the Egyptians. That's the plan, right? I'm going to deliver my people. You notice how he says that in the previous verse? My people. That's important. Because if we here this morning are followers of Jesus Christ, we are also part of God's my people. Right? Make sense? Okay. So the plan is to deliver them out of the hands of the Egyptians, to bring them out of that land to a good and broad land, a land flowing with milk and honey, a land of the Canaanites, the Hittites, the Amorites, the Perizzites, the Hivites, the Jebusites. The list is actually longer in the book of Numbers, but it's a shorter list here. Okay, verse 9. Now behold, the cry of the people of Israel has come to me. I have also seen the oppression to which the Egyptians oppress them. God knows there's a problem. God's recognizing the problem. He sees the problem. He hears the problem. He feels about the problem, right? We saw all those words in there. And he says, I have a plan. My plan is to deliver them. And then verse 10, he tells Moses the plan. And this is where things for Moses begin to kind of go off the rails, right? He says, I'm going to send you. How many remember this from last week? That's the plan, right? The plan is, Moses, you're going. I'm going to send you to Pharaoh that you may bring my people, the children of Israel, out of Egypt. I mean, it's a significant undertaking. Yeah? Like, I mean, your job is to go rescue 2 million people. Okay. Let me get right on that. Yeah? Like, there's obviously, this is going to be an involved process. There's going to have to be a lot going on here. And so Moses not only started the conversation afraid, but as we continue to look at this conversation that he's having with God, he continues to be afraid, not only of God, but of himself and his own abilities. And that's where these conversations with God start to get tricky. And we're going to see that as Moses begins to object to the plan, God is very patient and answers all of his objections calmly, rationally, with answers, supportive, very supportive of the things that Moses is concerned about until he gets to a certain point. We're going to see that when we get into chapter 4. But here's the plan. I'm going to send you to Pharaoh to bring my people out. And here's objection number 1. Moses said to God, "Who am I that I should go to Pharaoh and bring the children of Israel out of Egypt?" Right? This is objection number 1. Moses looks at God's plan, looks at what God's asking him to do, and says, "I am not worthy to do that." How many of you, whenever you've thought about the things that God's asked you to do, or you look at the stories in the Bible and you see the things that people do in the Bible, and you've had the thought, "It's not me. I'm not worthy of that." And as we go through this conversation, I think what we're going to see is that every single one of Moses' objections are the same type of objections we have when God asks us to do things. And so the first objection is simply this: God, I am not worthy to do it. And so if you're here this morning and if you've ever felt unworthy, God's got an answer for you. You want to see it? It's in the next verse. Okay? All right. Verse 12. He said this. He said, "I will be with you." That's the answer. "I will be with you, and this shall be the sign for you that I have sent you. When you have brought the people out of Egypt, you shall serve God on this mountain," which is exactly what happens. But God's answers to Moses' first objection of "I am not worthy" is simply this: "You might not be worthy, Moses, but I am." Right? Happens to be the name of God, right? This is a play on words there in the Hebrew, which we don't read. But anyway, and so whenever God asks us to do something, we may feel like we're not up to the task. But the truth is, we're not up to the task, right? None of us are worthy. That's the whole point of the Bible, right? God has a certain standard that none of us can live up to. And so as we attempt to do godly things with our lives, we will always consider ourselves not worthy or not qualified or not accomplished enough to do those things. We will always fall short of God's standards. Why? Because you're you and we're idiots. You didn't have to agree that quick. Right? And so God's saying, "I know you're not worthy, Moses. I know you're not worthy for the things I'm asking you to do, but I'm worthy, and I'm going to be with you." And so if we have the right perspective on the things that God is asking us to do in our lives, we realize it really doesn't matter how worthy we are. It really doesn't matter what our skill set is. It really doesn't matter who we are or how we got to where we are. The only thing that really matters is whether or not we're going to allow God to work through us. And God is saying that he is worthy. Moses, you might not be, but God is. Okay, verse 13. We got a lot to go over, so I'm going to try to move quick. If you have questions, ask Steve. All right, verse 13. Then Moses said to God, so here's the next objection. Objection number 2. Moses said to God, "If I come to the people of Israel and say to them, 'God of your fathers has sent me to you,' and they ask me, 'What is his name?' then what shall I say to them?" Now, what did God already do in this conversation before this point? Identify himself to Moses in verse 6, did he not? He told him who he was. And now, what is Moses saying here? "I don't believe you or who you say you are." Right? I think that's what he's really saying here, is I don't trust you. I don't trust you. You told me who you are. you told me what you want me to do. You say you're going to be with me. I'm not sure I trust that. I'm not sure I trust that. And so I think within that idea, there's an element of he also doesn't trust himself. Because how many of you have ever faced a task before and you're like, I don't trust myself to do that? Just me and Jody. Okay, well, wow, you guys are great. Well, I do that a lot. Okay, so I don't trust you. Is Moses' second objection? You're saying these great things. You're asking me to do something awesome. I'm not buying it. I'm not buying it, right? And here's what God says to that. God says to Moses, I am who I am. And he says, say this to the people of Israel, I am has sent me to you. So he gives them this name, this beautiful, awesome name. We talked about this last week. If you want to hear more about that, go to your YouTube page. Verse 15, God also said to Moses, say this to the people of Israel, the Lord, the God of your fathers, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob has sent me to you. This is my name forever, and thus I am to be remembered throughout all generations. And so go and gather. Now he gives them instructions, right? He answers Moses' question. You don't trust me? This is who I am. Here's what I want you to do. Verse 16, go and gather the elders of Israel together. Say to them, the Lord, the God of your fathers, the God of Abraham, of Isaac, and of Jacob, has appeared to me, saying, I have observed you and what has been done to you in Egypt, and I promise. What's that word there? Now, I don't know about you, but if I ever promise you something, you might not get it, right? I might have broken a promise or three in my time, right? But if God promises something, that's a whole different ballgame, isn't it? That's a whole different ballgame. And I promise that I will bring you up out of the affliction of Egypt into the land of the Canaanites, the Hittites, the Amorites, the Perizzites, the Hivites, the Jebusites, a land flowing with milk and honey. And he says this, verse 18, I want you to do that. And if you do that, Moses, they will listen to your voice. They will listen to you if you do what I tell you to do. And you and the elders of Israel shall go to the king of Egypt and say to him, the Lord, the God of the Hebrews, has met with us, and now please let us go on a 3 days journey into the wilderness, that we may sacrifice to the Lord our God. There's a whole lot of stuff there that we're not going to get into this morning because we're focused on the conversation. But I know that the king of Egypt will not let you go unless compelled by a mighty hand. So I will stretch out my hand and strike Egypt with all the wonders. The wonders are the 10 plagues that are going to come, right? In God's eyes, those are wonders, right? The Egyptians had a different viewpoint of that. With all the wonders that I will do in it, and after that, he will let you go. Verse 21, and I will give this people favor in the sight of the Egyptians. When you go, you shall not go empty. But each woman shall ask her neighbor, and any woman who lives in her house, for silver and gold jewelry, and for clothing, you shall put them on your sons and on your daughters. So you shall plunder the Egyptians. This is God's answer to Moses saying, I don't trust you. Just go and do what I say. They will listen to your voice, and all of Israel will come out of Egypt. And they will come out of Egypt with the plunder of conquerors. Right? That's the idea we're supposed to get here as we look at the last part of chapter 3. When a nation invades another nation and kills all the people and takes all the stuff, which was normal back then and actually kind of normal today, right? I mean, takes all the stuff, they take the loot from the captive nation and they bring it back to their home. And so when God is saying, I'm going to give you the plunder of Egypt, he's saying, you guys are going to walk out of Egypt as a conquering nation. That's the picture that we're supposed to get there from the end of chapter 3. And so Moses says, I don't trust you. And God's answer, and we pick this up as a very long answer that time, he simply says, you don't need to trust me. I'm going to be with you. I'm going to be with you the whole time. Not only that, but if we look at the answer of how he answered to what his name was, I have always been with you. I am the God of your father, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, the God of Jacob. I am aware of what's happening to my people. I have always been with you, and now is the time, and this is the place, and we are going to conquer Egypt. Have at it. And so that's a good answer, right? And so I'm sure Moses is like, yay, let's do it. Not what happens. Chapter 4. We continue the conversation. I have no idea why they divided chapter 3 and chapter 4 here. It makes no sense. The conversation is still ongoing, right? Chapter 4, verse 1. Well, Moses answered, but behold, right? See that first word there? But. How many of you like, yeah, I love Jesus, but I know God wants me to do this thing, but I got this reason or this excuse, or God doesn't understand the situation in my life, and so we come up with a lot of big buts to God, don't we? That's funny. Sorry. Yes, I'm a child, I know. But behold, they will not believe me or listen to my voice. What did God specifically say to Moses? They're going to listen to your voice. Remember that? He said that. I highlighted that for us, right? And now Moses is saying to God, they're not going to listen to my voice. For they will say, the Lord did not appear to you. And so I think the objection we're getting here from Moses, he's already expressed his distrust of God and his unfaithfulness. I think what he's really doing here is he's expressing his own shortcomings. It's like saying, I'm nobody. They're not going to listen to me because I'm nobody. How many of you have ever felt that way? Maybe God's asked you to speak into someone's life. Maybe ask them to stop drinking or stop doing drugs, or they need to start going to church, or they need to start reading their Bibles. And God's put that on your heart to talk to a person about that. And your first thought is, why would they listen to me? I have that thought like about 10 o'clock every Sunday morning, by the way. Why would they listen to me? I'm nobody. I'm nobody special. Why would they listen to me? God says in verse 2, what is that in your hand? Moses said, it's the staff. Shepherds had staffs and rods. That was their kind of tools of their trade. Staff was tall. If you're a fan of cartoons, you generally see them in cartoons with the hook on the end and they yank the guy off the stage with it. That's a shepherd's staff, right? The rod was a club, right? And so we had the big tall staff, and the club was about yay long. It was just a heavy piece of wood that you used to beat on animals that were going after your flock. A wolf came after a sheep, you hit him in the head with a club, right? They're the two tools of the trade. And so Moses, being a shepherd at this point in his life, has a staff with him. God says, what's that in your hand? Moses says, it's a staff. He said, throw it on the ground. Right, threw it on the ground. It became a serpent. That's weird, right? We got more weirdness happening here, right? How many of you have ever seen a stick turn into a snake? Yeah, that doesn't happen, right? That's weird stuff. And of course, Moses is still afraid, right? Because he's been afraid this whole entire time. And so what does he do? How many of you, if you saw a stick turn into a snake, would run? Yeah. Makes sense, doesn't it? How many of you, if you know that God was going to do something miraculous and he turned a stick into a snake, might stick around and see what God was going to do with it? Maybe. Maybe you'd have a little more confidence at that point in time. Moses ran away. But the Lord said to Moses, put out your hand and catch it by the tail. So he put out his hand and caught it, which snakes are slippery. So good on him, a good agility on Moses, right? And he caught it, and it became a staff. Stick, snake, stick, right? We get the picture? Yeah, okay. That they may believe that the Lord, the God of their fathers, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob, has appeared to you. So, you don't think they're going to believe you? Fine. Let me give you this power to show them that. Verse 6. Lord said to him, put your hand inside your cloak, right? So he's doing like the little Napoleon thing. You ever seen those pictures of Napoleon with his hand in? Never mind. Learn some history, guys. Come on. Put your hand inside your cloak. He put his hand inside his cloak. We took it out. Behold, his hand was leprous like snow. Not a great trick, right? Honestly, God, if you're going to play a trick like that, I don't know if I want to be involved, right? But anyways, transformed his hand. Transformed the staff. Transformed his hand, right? God said, put your hand back inside your cloak. Put his hand back inside his cloak. We took it out. It was restored. Healed, not only transformed to disease, but also healed it. If they will not believe you, God said, or listen to the first sign, they may believe the latter sign. But wait, there's more. If they will not believe even these two signs or listen to your voice, you shall take some water from the Nile. And this is symbolic, right? Because the Nile is the source of life for all Egypt. Without the river, the people die, right? And so he's saying, take the lifeblood of Egypt, pour it on dry ground. The water you shall take from the Nile will become blood on the dry ground. And so Moses says, I'm nobody, and God says, let me give you these tools. I'm going to help you, right? And so if you've ever been in a situation where God has asked you to do something, and your response is, I'm nobody, they're not going to listen to me. If God is asking you to do something, he is going to give you the tools to get that done. He is going to give you the tools to get that done. In this case, it's snakes and leprosy and blood, right? In your case, it may be a phone call, a text message, or a cup of coffee. He'll give you the tools that it takes to get it done, right? And so, you think that convinced Moses yet? No, not yet. Not yet. Verse 10, chapter 4. But Moses said to the Lord, here's his fourth objection, I am not eloquent either in the past or since you have spoken to your servant. I am slow of speech and of tongue. His excuses are getting pretty thin, right? So he's saying here, Lord, you want me to speak to people, and I don't have those tools. I'm simply unqualified to do what you're asking me to do. You guys ever feel unqualified to do what God's asking you to do? Or to do what other people are asking you to do? If people are asking you to do something, and God is in it, and you feel unqualified, then here's God's answer. The Lord said then, who has made the man's mouth? Who makes him mute or deaf or seeing or blind? Is it not I, the Lord? Now therefore go, I will be with your mouth, and I will teach you what you shall speak. You're unqualified? That's fine. I will teach you. Right? If God is in something that he or someone else is asking you to do, he will teach you how to do it along the way. You just have to trust in that. Now, if you, let's say, for example, what's a good example? I should have thought through this before I started talking. Let's say, for example, God is asking you to help your neighbor cut down a tree. That was weird. Anyway, God is asking you to help your neighbor cut down a tree. You've never touched a chainsaw in your life. You don't know what an axe is, right? I'm not qualified to do this. And yet God is saying you need to help your neighbor cut down this tree. I don't know why he would do that, but he's God, and I'm not. Anyway, and so if you decide that, yes, you're going to do what God is telling you to do, even though you're not really sure why, and even though you're completely unqualified to cut down a tree, if you decide and say, okay, God, I'll do it, and you don't get out of your chair, are you going to learn how to cut down a tree? No, you are not. You are going to learn how to cut down a tree by getting up out of the chair, by walking out of the house, by going over to your neighbor's house, and by saying, hey, do you happen to have a tree that you need cut down? Because I've got a few hours and I would love to help you out. Somehow, in that process, God is going to teach you how to cut down a tree. But if you stay at home and you don't get off your butt, you ain't going to learn a thing. Does that make sense? You might be unqualified for the things that in your life that you are trying to do, or the things in your life that God is asking you to do. But if you just trust him and start to move, he will teach you how to get it done. Make sense? Okay. Here's where things really get bad. Chapter 4, verse 13, Moses finally says, after all these things, God is not, let's take a step back. God's been pretty patient with Moses so far, yes? I don't know. I'm not the right guy. I'm not sure I trust you. I don't really have the skills. He's been pretty patient so far. He's answered him in supportive ways. He's told him that for every objection he has, I'm going to take care of it. I'm going to take care of it. I'm going to take care of it. All you need to do is trust me. All you need to do is trust me. And then we get to verse 13 of chapter 4, and he says, "Oh Lord, please send someone else." I can't. No. Just flat out saying no. Now, I don't know about you. Let's put this in perspective, right? I don't know about you, but if I'm talking to a flame that's in a bush that's not burning a bush, and hearing a voice out of that flame that identifies itself with God, I'm not sure the word no would ever come out of my lips, right? Whatever you say, flamey God, right? But he doesn't do that. He just says, no. Send someone else. I'm not the guy. It's above my pay grade. Shouldn't so-and-so be doing that? They're more qualified. Maybe you've heard some of those other phrases there. You ever maybe even used it. God, I'm not your guy. I'm not your girl. You're going to have to find somebody else. That didn't work out well for Moses. Verse 14. The anger of the Lord was kindled against Moses. See, up until this point, God's just like, I got you, I got you, I got you. So it's very, very much in hug mode. Now he's moving to slap mode, right? No more of this hug stuff. We're going to slap, right? Now I'm mad. He finally says, is there not Aaron, your brother, the Levite? I know that he can speak well. Behold, he is coming out to meet you. When he sees you, he will be glad in his heart. You want to send someone else? I'll give you someone, but you're still going to do it. So I'm going to pick this dude who happens to be your brother, who you haven't seen in 80 years, and you probably haven't thought of. I'm going to make him a part of the deal, right? Which honestly didn't end up working out too well for him. We'll see that as we continue to go through Exodus. Go into the desert. You're going to see your brother there. He's going to be happy to see you. Verse 15, you'll speak with him. These next few verses get very convoluted and confusing. You shall speak to him and put the words in his mouth. I will be with your mouth and with his mouth, and will teach you both what to do. Right? So God, it's like God's going to Moses, and Moses is going to Aaron, but God is also going to Aaron, but that's a different sort of pipeline. Anyway, I'm not God. I don't know. He shall speak for you to the people. He shall be your mouth, and you shall be as God to him. And so there's just an idea that God is going to work through Moses whether he likes it or not. You want to work through Aaron, fine, but I'm coming to you, and you're going to have to talk to Aaron. And if he wants to do his bit, that's fine. And take in your hand the staff with which you shall do the signs, right? So don't forget the stick, because it's going to turn to a snake, and then it'll be a stick again. It'll make sense at the time, right? And so God answers his final objection of I can't with simply this: yes, you can. Yes, you can. You ever thought that there's something in your life that you should do, that you think God might be asking you to do, or that you know God is asking you to do, and never had the thought, I can't do that? God's answer to do is absolutely yes, you can. Stop being a baby about it. Yes, you can. And here's how, right? Don't forget that part. He also gives them that. So even though God's angry, even though Moses has tried his patience tremendously, I'm angry at you. You can do it. Stop being a whiny baby. You can do it. Here's how. I'm going to give you Aaron. Right? And so even in God's anger, he's still looking out for his people. He's still providing a way for his people, even in his anger. And so we see whatever objection Moses came up with, God answered. And answered in a way that allowed Moses to know that what God was asking him to do was not only possible, but that all he had to do was get up out of the chair, walk out the door, and do it, and God was going to do all the heavy lifting. And I think so many times when we try to figure out I know you guys have had thoughts like this before in your mind, but show of hands this morning, right? How many of you this morning have ever thought along the lines of, God, what should I do with my life? Or what is it that you want me to do? Or something along those lines. You've had those kind of thoughts, yes? Almost everybody in the room has had those kind of thoughts. And here's the sad part about it. When we have those kind of thoughts and we ask those kind of questions to God, he's answering us. He's giving us answers. Now, it might not be an answer you see. It might not be an answer you understand. But he's giving us answers over and over and over again. And yet, because we can't understand the answer that he's giving us, we stay right where we're at and we don't move because we're confused and we're afraid, just like Moses was. I think if we tried a little different strategy, right? A little bit different strategy of instead of, hey, I'm not sure what to do next, so I'm going to turtle up. Well, I'm not sure what to do next, but I feel like this might be a godly thing. I'm going to go try it. I think that would be a better strategy. Yes? Begin to start doing the things that you feel like God is asking you to do in your life. And I don't know what that looks like for you. I don't know if that means you need to stop drinking. I don't know if that means you need to stop doing drugs. I don't know if that means you need to start reading your Bible. I don't know if that means you need to quit your job. That's what God did to me. He legit came to me at one point and said, you need to quit your job. That was it. That was the entire message. Guess what I did? Quit my job. And look at where I ended up. Yay us, right? So we don't always get the whole picture. We don't always get the whole message. But we're never going to understand the awesomeness that God has for us in our life if all we do is continue week after week to come to church and to sit in this pew and to sing the songs and never do anything else. You can't tell me that you don't know someone in your life who God might need you to speak into what they're doing a little bit. Yes? Mm-hmm. Well, then why aren't you? Because God says you're worthy. And God says I'm with you. And God says I'm going to help you. And God says I'm going to teach you. And God says, yes, you can. So you can keep lying to yourself and telling yourself that you're unworthy, that you're unqualified, that you don't have what it takes, but that is not how God sees you. There is so much more that God has for your life than you know. There's so much more. And the only thing that's stopping you from grabbing a hold of that beautiful, awesome thing that God has for you, the only thing stopping you is you. And your refusal to believe in him and to trust him and to have faith in him. Does that make sense? Have more conversations with God. Throw your questions and objections out there. He doesn't care about that. Did he mind when Moses had objections? No. Did he mind when Moses questioned him? No. When did he start getting angry? When Moses refused him. Have conversations with God. Ask Him questions. Tell Him your doubts. And then get off your butt and do something. Fair? Man, that's like the whole message then. All right. We got another song for you. The band's going to come back up. And this song is just about how beautiful and how awesome God is, right? And because He is beautiful and awesome, and He invites us into that. He invites us into that. And so we too can become beautiful and awesome like Him. But we got to start moving. We got to start taking steps. We got to stop sitting in these pews and just expecting God to do things. Yes? All right, let's go to the Lord in prayer. Then we got one more song for you. Father, thank you so much for being here with us today. Thank you for the love that you have for us. Thank you for the grace that you've given us. Thank you for this section, this conversation that was recorded in our Bibles between you and between Moses, and in which he showed his vulnerability. He showed how what he thought about himself was not the truth. And Lord, I know this morning that here in this room, there are people who are believing lies about themselves. And so, Father, I ask that you come into each one of our lives and help us to see the truth about who you say I am and what you think that we are capable of.